class as a social unit. What causes differences in social climate among the various schools, the various classrooms within a school? See here, the principal's behavior will, of course, affect the teacher's behaviors, and in turn, the teacher's behaviors will have a strong influence on the students' behaviors, but vice versa. Is that right? So, social psychologists study the way people affect and are affected by other people. So, as a subfield of psychology, social psychology uses the behavior of the individual as its unit of analysis. The individual's behavior in the social context. So let's take a look at one. The next one here, social facilitation. Okay? Social facilitation. A concept used to explain the fact that in some circumstances, individuals perform more quickly when in a group situation than when alone. So social facilitation is most pronounced in the case of fairly simple mechanical tasks. The more difficult and the more intellectual the task, the less the effect of social facilitation. Right? So take a look at what at this here would be what a word learning task. So that's what easy versus a difficult task. For easy task here, it's what in the presence of others. If it is an easy task, then it is better than what working alone. There is social facilitation, right? But then, just the reverse is true for difficult tasks. Working alone is much better than what working in the presence of others, right? So altogether, when a person is first attempting to learn something new, the presence of other people is what detrimental. Right? And take a look at some concepts related to group situation. First of all, here called the risky shift. Right? Now, what is it? Individuals become far less cautious in group situations than they would be if they were alone. Right? So they are less cautious, less conservative, right? And more willing to gamble and take greater risks. Right? So they are in the group situation, they are suddenly willing to take greater risk, okay, regarding their attitude as well as their behaviors. Okay, for example, passing through the cemetery alone in the middle of the night with the whole group, not by yourself, or that type of thing, right? So, that is say when someone disrupts your class with an image-building display of ego, you shouldn't be too overly concerned. Okay? Perhaps a short session along with the student will be sufficient to restore the equilibrium and integrity of the classroom. Now, in a group situation, some students may do that. Right? May do that. So you shouldn't be overly concerned. All right. Okay. The next one here, brainstorming. Brainstorming, and you know what? Companies like to do that. Now, brainstorming, individuals get together and then attempt to solve problems, in new and creative ways, hopefully. They are urged to interact freely, to call out any ideas, no matter how bizarre, and to hold nothing back. Right? So let's take a look at an experiment. All right. And then, so subjects were given problems to solve. Right? Now, so here subjects worked in an isolated situation versus in a five group situation. Right? So take a look at the results here. A group has differential effects on behavior. Working in a group situations had two main effects. It increases a feeling of competition and motivation. It increases feelings, of course, of anxiety and provides distraction. Right? So there are two things here under group situation. So working in isolated situations better than in a five group situation. Just opposite to opposite to our intuition. All right. Now, cohesiveness. It is a byproduct of interaction in a group situation. Group members tend to stick together more and have more of a sense of we-ness than I-ness. And cohesiveness may be enhanced by the following. Friendly interactions. Interactions must be on friendly terms. Okay, cooperation, working together to achieve superordinate goals. Right? That type of thing. Right? Group status. High status group tend to be more cohesive than low status group. Now, look at those groups. Okay, very cohesive group. Hitler, the Nazi group, Hare Krishna, all those were dancing on the street. The KKK, and the Proud Boys, all these high status groups, they consider themselves to belong to a high status group. So group members are made to believe that they belong to super race. Now, another thing is that an outside threat, when the group identifies an outside threat, a common threat, then this identification can dramatically increase group cohesiveness. For example, during World War II, the Soviets and the Americans, they were allies, right? And perhaps you're not aware is that when Trump lost the election, there was several times he wanted to raise what he calls a minor war with China, right? But then the general, I think it is called Mark Miller, he had direct contact with his counterpart in China. Okay, it's just to stop Trump from ordering the army to attack China. in the Strait of Taiwan. Okay, because why he wanted to do that? Trump wanted to do that because whenever there is a outside threat of war, then American people, this war will tend to galvanize people. Okay, so they become more cohesive, and they would want Trump to stay on. Okay, all right, so that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous, and a lot of political figures, they have actually done this. Okay, style of leadership. Democratic leaders tend to promote cohesiveness more than authoritarian leaders. Right? So we'll come to this one a little later on when we discuss leadership. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at cohesiveness and productivity. Research indicates that there is no simple one-to-one relationship between cohesiveness and productivity. Let's take a look at a very early experiment conducted. Productivity is the dependent variable. Now take a look at here. Cohesiveness, high and low versus motivation. Is it positive motivation, negative motivation, or you could conceive this as high motivation and low motivation. Now look at this here. Okay, for the group with high motivation, then high cohesiveness, a high cohesive group tends to be more productive than low cohesive group with the same level of motivation. And but then the reverse. Okay, the reverse is true. When we deal with less motivation, for less motivation, then the group with low cohesiveness will outperform the group with high cohesiveness. All right. So just the opposite. So here, productivity as a function of cohesiveness and motivation. And okay, take a look at another very popular topic in psychology, conformity. Okay, while in a group situation, people tend to behave in a uniform way. Okay? The pressure to conform is virtually irresistible, and may come in a variety of forms in both structured and less structured situations. For example, through physical force, like to obtain conformity through physical force, like a bouncer throwing a rowdy customer out of the local tavern, because this customer has exercised too much individuality inside the bar, inside the tavern, right? I saw them go to a bar, so I have not had the opportunity to witness this. And more subtly, and then people you see in a church, people stand and kneel with the precision of a marching band, right, in a church. And so it is kind of interesting to see, right? In a classroom, an unseen force helps to enforce discipline, right? For classroom teacher likes to use group pressure, okay, to help to use group pressure to make sure the students will remain disciplined. For those of you who intend to teach later on, and may the force be with you all. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what conformity has been what demonstrated experimentally in many studies. Okay, let me show you a couple of them. Okay, the first one is called the autokinetic effect, a famous experiment, classic experiment conducted in 1936. Now, what is autokinetic effect? Here it is. Okay, a stationary pinpoint source of light. Okay, in an otherwise dark room will appear to move. Yeah, this is true. You could try it. Okay, put a laser pointer stationary. Make sure it rests on something stationary. And turn on the laser pointer and turn off the light in a pitch black room. Then you watch the point source, the point source of light. Okay, and very soon you will begin to see that the light, even though it is stationary, it appears to move. Okay, this is called the autokinetic effect. Right? So the effect is even more dramatic if the subject in experiment if the subject does not know how far away the light really is. All right? So that's the autokinetic effect. All right? Okay. Now, let's take a look at the experiment. Subjects were gathered in groups of 3 in a darkened room and were presented with the pinpoint source of light. Subjects were then asked to call out aloud their estimates of how far the light had moved. Okay, now look at the results. Okay, look at the result. Okay, after a few trials, all the subjects reported essentially the same distance. That is to say, a group norm had emerged. Okay. When many of the subjects were later tested individually, they still perceived the light on the basis of the norms created in the group situation. For example, okay, a member of the 10-inch group continued to conform to this 10-inch standard. All right. So very soon, all members, 3 members of the group will report approximately the point source has moved this distance. Some group say 6 inches, some 10 inches, some maybe 3 inches. But then then even afterward, after the experiment, okay, a member of the 10-inch group continued to conform to this 10-inch standard, was tested alone. All right. Another famous experiment by H back in 1952. Okay, that was 70 years ago, long time ago. Okay, but it is considered to be a classic experiment. Okay, it's still the experiment is still quoted in a lot of social psychology course textbooks, as well as educational psychology textbooks. All right, so what is it? You see here in the diagram here, subjects were required to select the line having the same length as the standard line. See, that's the standard line, and you have 3 lines here. Which one is which line 1, 2, 3 has the same length as the standard line? All right, now here one experimental subject, sat down together with 8 bogus subjects, 8 stooges, okay, who were told beforehand just what to say and how to respond. All right? Well, psychology experiment. All right? Now, once in a while, the 8 bogus subjects would all agree on a certain line, even though that line could not possibly be the correct one. It was in this setting that the subjects were incorrect 1/3 of the time. You see what I mean? So you see, take a look at the what interesting thing. Well, heck, if all you was smart cookies agree, who am I to dissent? Right? Who am I to dissent? Right? So that's a good one. Right? That's a good one. Now take a look at the summary of the result. Okay. The number of bogus subjects at that one, error rate for the single subject. Okay. When one, there are 8 bogus subjects or 3 bogus subjects, the error rates were 1/3 of the time. Okay. Quite large, is that right? But then when only 2 bogus subjects, see the error rate dropped to 12%. When there's only 1, so 1 against 1 is negligible. Right? That is negligible. Well, now look at the one here. When the situation was reversed, when there was a naive majority of 16 against 1 lone stooge, the errors of the stooge were met with uncontrolled laughter from the rest of the group. Can you see that? So, are there any non-conformists? Yes. Most of them are either in prison or in psychiatric hospital. All right. And so take a look at locus of control. Okay, locus of control. Now, of course, we know what in psychology we have external people with external locus of control and internal internal locus of control, external locus of control. Okay, so let's take a look here. Okay, now, so people differ on how readily they yield to the seductive lure of conformity. Okay, people measured, of course, they are using psychological measurement. Okay, people measured as having internal locus of control view themselves as being personally in control of their actions and in charge of their own destinies. Okay, they are more apt to stand up to group pressure, stand up to group's demands. Okay, they have greater ego strength. Okay, greater feeling of personal competence. Now, ego strength. What is ego strength? We will discuss this in more detail when we come to what is it? Emotional intelligence. Okay, so ego strength means you can control yourself. Say, for example, tomorrow you have a final exam. Tonight, let's say I don't know, CSI 2-hour finale. Okay, are you going to study or watch CSI? That type of thing. Those of you who choose to study, you have strong you have ego strength, right? That type of thing. Anyway, so take a look at external locus of control. Okay, people measured as having external locus of control feel that they are largely at the mercy of what? Of environmental circumstances. They are more what? They are more easily swayed by group pressure because what they think that I have no control. The outside forces kind of control me. How can I do that? How can I resist it? How resist the force or resist the forces? All right. So that type of thing. All right. All right. So let's take a look at one generation gap. Say, a lot of you may have experienced this. Is that right? Like between you and your parents, or especially between you and your grandparents. Okay, so you know what that is. Okay, so it essentially from the psychological point of view, is essentially a difference in group norms. Is that right? So the crucial ingredient in the formation of norm, and thus conformity, is the interaction among group members. All right. So take a look at the group norms here. Group norms the set the limits of what you could do or what each member of the group to do. That the limits will also affect the interactions among the group members. And of course, here, all these interactions will have an influence on group norms. So then in this triangle here, status and role relationship will begin to emerge. Right? Will begin to emerge. So that's the generation gap. Okay? Take a look at our next one. Okay. Socialization. Socialization is the process of learning society's rules and customs, and is accomplished through pressure to conform. Okay? Socialization is necessary to society, but what produces some loss of personal independence and individuality. Of course. Okay? So let's take a look at one. Take a look at a concept, a very popular one in psychology, called cognitive dissonance. Okay? By Leon Festinger, 1957. It is still very popular nowadays. And then Peter Chow has published a test, a 200-item test called the cognitive dissonance test. Okay, DISS. Okay, and of course here I have also revised the test, so it's called DISS-R, revised version of the dissonance test. All right. Anyways, so let's take a look. Take a look at here. Right? Leon Festinger looks at this aspect of socialization. According to him, people strive to achieve a state of equilibrium among the various attitudes and behaviors. This is because we prefer consistency, or another term for that is consonance. Okay, consistency, consonance. All right, and we prefer consistency or consonance to inconsistency or dissonance. So therefore, whenever we have a thought that is not consistent with our behavior, okay, we experience cognitive dissonance, and we are motivated to restore the equilibrium. All right? So now, let me give you an example. I give you an example. someone who enjoys smoking and then who hears what that smoking is a health hazard, okay, can either conclude that one, here someone who likes smoking, but then what? Then this someone hears that smoking causes cancer. So, so then what? Then what? There is what? There is a dissonance. Is that right? Well, I like smoking, but smoking causes cancer. Well, what should I do in order to what? To reduce dissonance. That person can change the behavior, quit smoking. Okay, or what? Don't pay attention to the what? To the information. Say well, smoking causes cancer. You say that's not true. Okay, something like that. In order to restore equilibrium. So how do we do that here? To dissolve what cognitive dissonance, we could do what one of the followings. One of the following: change our thinking or change our attitude so that it conforms to our behavior, or change our behavior so that it conforms to our thought. I two. I so two ways to do that. So either way could what? Could reduce dissonance. Right? Okay. Right? Now, when what let's return to the what to the smoker. Okay, either stop smoking or you stop thinking about what smoking what causes cancer. All right? Now, one textbook put out something like this: the one smoker, it has been said, was so nervous after reading what the evidence linking either what linking smoking with cancer, that he gave up reading, continued to smoke, but he doesn't read. That's the way to do it. Is that right? You don't want you change your thinking or you change your reading habit, and then you continue smoking. All right. Now, so that is what cognitive dissonance. Okay. Now let us take a look at another one. Take a look at aggression. Let's take a look at over more than 2,000 children are murdered by their parents or caretakers every year in the United States, and in and even more common are the tiny broken bodies resulting from what we call the battered child syndrome. Okay, that is really heartbreaking. Is that right? As every football, hockey, and boxing fan knows, okay, violence also has crowd appeal. Even in NHL, okay, they want rough checking. Rough checking will generate a concussion, in the ring. But NHL has no intention to stop that. Okay, because why? Because the fans kind of they like that, because that has crowd appeal. As for major conflicts, the world has rarely seen a day, okay, since the beginning of recorded history, when there wasn't a full-scale war going on somewhere on the globe. Okay? So these facts seem to argue that aggression is an inevitable byproduct of people getting together in groups. All right. So take a look at take a look at 4 basic positions regarding the issue of aggression. Now, of course, you understand that society, human society, is obviously fraught with violence. Right? Example one, you hear that every day in news news broadcasts that homicide, assault, robbery, rape, right? That type of thing, right? So psychology has generated 4 basic positions regarding the issue of aggression. Okay, let's take a look at the Freudian position. Freud. Okay, aggression is built into the organism and is as basic to human behavior as sexuality. Of course, it has to be compared to sex. The 30-year-old man, right? Everything is sex in Freudian psychology. So that means aggression is largely inherited, right? So the urge to violence is a result of pressure from our innate and irrational instinct. Okay, this approach, of course, here is not right because it has been criticized as committing what we call the nominal fallacy. Nominal fallacy that is what use description to explain an event. Right? It smacks of circular reasoning, like built-in aggression causes aggression. Aggression is due to our built-in instinct, circular, that type of thing. All right. So let's take a look at another one by Conrad Johnson. Okay, the ideological approach. Okay, of course, also in this approach is also saying that it is largely inherited. If the proper releaser occurs, the potential for aggression will quickly be translated into action. Now, for example, those of you who like to have an aquarium of fish at home here, the male stickleback fish attacks whenever stimulated by the color red, by red color. All right. Also, bulls, beta fish, and so on. Okay. As for humans, Conrad Lawrence feels that aggression has survival value for the species. Okay, so since population density often outturns available food supplies. Right? So aggression acts both to reduce the size of the population and to spread the remaining population over a larger area. Okay? So Conrad Lawrence based his theory on observations of lower organisms like rats. Here, take a look at the experiment performed in 1964, and it has the same experiment has been repeated many times. Okay, so take a look at it here. A group of rats. Okay, a group of rats, and after intensive observation, they were divided into 2 groups. One group consists of less aggressive rats, according to the observations, and another group most aggressive. then in breeding, after 7 generations of breeding, you know, for the least aggressive rats, and then after the most aggressive rats, and the after 7 generations, the offsprings of the most aggressive rats, okay, they displayed far significantly far more aggressive behaviors than those least aggressive offsprings. Right? So at the human level, we have we have called the concordance rate, okay, and using monozygotic or dizygotic twins, okay, Rosenthal. Okay, Rosenthal, very famous psychologist, okay. He worked with with monozygotic twins versus dizygotic twins, okay. So he basically he observed that the percentage of co-twins having the trait, right? Say regarding what crimes of violence was significantly higher for monozygotic twins than dizygotic twins. Monozygotic twins here is that you have how should I put it here? One sperm cell, is that right? Fertilizes 2 eggs, okay? But dizygotic twins here separate eggs fertilized at the same time by 2 sperms, right? And so therefore they are no more alike genetically than other siblings. Okay, so the monozygotic twins, they are we call them twin. Okay? They are very close to one another. They share almost majority of the DNAs. Okay, that type of thing. All right. So you see here at the human level, the concordance rate, okay, shows that aggression has a has a genetic component, a strong genetic component, right? So another theory, Dollar and Miller, right? Dollar and Miller, the very famous social psychologist. Okay, so here, according to them, here aggression is caused by is explained as the result of being frustrated or of having one's goals blocked. For example, you see that nowadays you see road rage. Okay, now, but then there are some drawbacks, okay, for this model as an explanatory model, like aggression is due to frustration. Why? So let's take a look at the situations where some people react to frustration not with overt aggression, but merely by sitting quietly and sitting inward, sitting inward, right? So that is one. Okay? And there are some people react to frustration by by regressing. That is to say, acting in a less mature fashion. All right. And there are countless examples of aggressive behaviors that are not triggered by frustration. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, a student was playing poker in the dorm when without provocation, another student moved quietly behind his chair and playfully poured cold beer on his head. Okay? 5 seconds and 2 punches later, the playful pourer was on his back, nursing a bruised eye and jaw. All right? Then take a look at another example. Okay, a depressed individual crawled to the edge of the dormitory or the edge of the dormitory roof, okay, and threatened suicide. And thousands of students stood below and chanted in unison, "Jump, jump, jump, come on, jump." What is it? Okay, what is it? What kind of a question is it? And then you see here, okay, number 3, and then later on, number 4, okay, they are what? They are due to what? They're due to what? They are actually products of the environment. So let's take a look at what social learning, okay, due to what? Who else? Bandura, okay. Now, according to Bandura, aggressive behaviors are learned and copied, imitated, not provoked, not annoyed, or is not frustrated. Remember Bandura's famous bubble doll experiment. Okay? If children watch the aggressive adult model playing aggressively with the bubble doll, okay, they too will imitate the aggressive behavior. Okay? They will imitate They will also imitate Superman, Supergirl. They want to fly, okay? They put on a cape or a towel, a long towel, and they think they could fly, okay? But don't let them. Sometimes they would climb up to the bunker bed, okay? Climb up to the higher level of the bed, and then jump, or they will climb the mountain, see, and climb to the cliff, and I can fly. you don't let them do that, okay? Okay, the little that little moron will do that. Okay, when we were young, we were just like that. Okay? We were just like that. Now, according to Bandura, observational learning occurs when a new behavior or new information is learned vicariously by watching the actions of others and the consequences they experience. So certain conditions determine whether and to what extent, behaviors or information that are required from others. So you see here, attention must be directed toward an appropriate model who is attractive for some reason and whose behavior seems relevant to the observer's goals. All right, and then we have retention of the behavior or information must occur. The observer must be able to remember what the model has said or done. Right? Then we have the production process. Right? The production processes involve the observer's ability to convert these memories into appropriate actions, and of course the capacity to self-monitor performance. Then motivation ensures that learned behaviors will be put to use. All right, so that's Bandura's how Bandura explained modeling, okay, or how we copy what behaviors, okay, how we want model other people. And aggression and the mass media. All right. Take a look at one a very famous one. Well, we'll talk about one very famous experiment. Right? Look at Seagal's. Seagal's surveys. According to him here is that most children are avid television viewers. Well, that survey was conducted in 1969. Okay, but it is still true, more true now than that time. Is that right? Now, so the survey report indicates that the average at that time, 1969, the average 16-year-old has spent more hours in front of the TV than in class. Same nowadays. Same nowadays. Now, look at Iran, later on, 1982. Okay? His study found significant relationship between watching violence on TV and acting out of aggression as rated by peer rating. Right? Like what? Ninja Turtle, Power Rangers, G.I. Joes, most Disney cartoons, okay? Criminal Minds, CSI, 24 hours Jack Bauer, that type of thing, okay? However, it is difficult to infer cause and effect, okay, relationship with this type of study, okay, because a lot of time they use correlation coefficient. Those of you who have taken my design class, you realize that now design design 2 or measurement, okay, or measurement 1, okay, measurement 1 and measurement 2. Okay, you realize that we cannot we cannot draw we cannot draw causation or conclude causation from a correlation coefficient. Okay, we cannot do that. Okay, so that is to say it is difficult to infer cause and effect relationship when we use correlational approach. Okay, well, the question is, does the violence on TV cause the boys to be aggressive, or does aggressiveness in boys cause them to select violent TV shows? Right? So that type of thing. Okay, so it is it is hard for us to obtain cause and effect. And similarly, smoking. Okay, smoking. It takes the court, okay, take the court how long? More than half a century, maybe even longer, okay, to find tobacco company, okay, because it's very difficult to establish cause and effect. Say smoking causes cancer because most of those early studies, okay, used the correlational approach, not controlled experiment. Okay, they couldn't use controlled experiment because of human right, or you can do ethics, okay, research ethics. All right, so take a look at a very famous experiment, okay, conducted by Milgram and Shortland in 1973. Okay, they attempted an experimental evaluation of aggression in the media, okay, by using a large portion of the United States as their laboratory. See here, using a large portion of the United States. So Milgram and Shortland talked CBS, CBS into creating two versions of a popular program. One version having far more aggressive cues than the other. Right? So here you have what? Less aggressive cues broadcast to what selected cities, more aggressive cues broadcast to other cities. Result: no difference in the rates of violence among the cities receiving the what? The aggressive one, the aggressive program. Okay? And even though what these cities were equated for prior levels of what violent crimes. So here, so it is what? It is not due to what? Watching or hearing more violent shows will induce people to want to act violently. Okay, it's not that. Okay, so what is it? All right. Fashback and Singer, another classic experiment. Okay, aggressiveness was measured before and after the six-week controlled viewing regimen. Okay, all subjects were boys enrolled in private boarding schools or state residential schools. All right, so take a look at the situation. You have what? Violent TV shows versus non-violent TV shows. All right. So the results suggest that what? Here, look at the results here. After watching violent TV shows and using the thematic perception test, this group of subjects here displayed what? More covert or fantasy aggression than the non-violent TV shows group. And then what? This group watching non-violent TV shows, they displayed what? Twice as many fistfights and far more overt verbal aggression. Are you kidding me? Yes. The result suggests what? The results suggest that TV violence had a possibly cathartic effect on boys. Okay, that is to say, what? Rechanneling their hostility so as to inhibit overt regression. That's a Freudian explanation, right? That is a Freudian explanation. All right. Take a look at this here. The effect of media violence, some underlying processes. All right. First of all, of course, here exposure to media violence. Okay, what happened? And then here it weakened restraint against aggression. That here acquisition of new aggressive responses. See, modeling, okay, priming of aggressive thought, script, memories, and then desensitization to the pain and discomfort of victim, and here produce aggressive behavior. Okay, all right. So that's the underlying conditions. All right. Now, see, take here. Fashback and Singer, they caution, however, that watching real life violence on newscast may increase rather than decrease the expression of aggressive responses on the part of the viewers. They say that violence presented in the form of fiction is much less likely to reinforce, stimulate, or what elicit aggressive responses than violence in the form of a news event. Right? Uh, so you see that what it was what so early at that time, but psychologists would realize the differences between what violence in films, in what in novels versus violence in what news broadcast, right? So you realize that it took say TV stations so long to come to today that what here that a scene may make what viewers uncomfortable. Viewer discretion is advised. That type of thing, right? It took us long, right? All right. Look at the conclusion. Look at the conclusion of aggression and the mass media. Okay, one cannot casually dismiss the possibly profound effects, okay, that television has on viewer behavior. You see, the advertisers obviously believe that television affects behavior, and they back up their belief not just with a heartfelt wish, but with billions of dollars spent for commercial. All right, so this is so true. Right? This is so true. All right, let's take a look at yeah, good. Take a look at leadership. All right, take a look at leadership. Now, the highest position in the status hierarchy of any group is that of leader. Let's take a look at some theories of some theories of leadership. I so take a look here. The great leader theory. So you see that one. It sees leadership as a quality of the individual. Okay, the quality of the individual. Okay, in its boldest form, the theory states that certain individuals possess just the right blend of looks, personality traits, and intelligence, IQ, to be almost automatically thrust into leadership position. Now, look around the world, or look around the world stage. In democratic countries, most leaders have good look, great wealth, they dress well, okay, that type of thing. So it is pretty true, is that right? I think it's pretty true. Now, the group theory. This one is more logical. Okay? Logical. Almost anyone who fulfills some basic needs of the group can be a leader. Now, but then what? Since the needs of the group shift, so too does the leadership. For example, a group on a camping trip would see leadership constantly changing according to the dictates of the situation. Now, let me give you an example. If the group became lost, the individual with the compass would become the leader. If someone became injured, the person with first aid knowledge and supplies would become the leader. All right? Would become the leader. All right. So now look at these two here. The actual evidence regarding leadership now suggests that the best explanation lies somewhere between these two theories. Both theories are needed to account for the data. Certain individual qualities do seem to be more common in leaders than in other group members. Right? So both theories, both of them here are needed. All right. Classroom leadership. Let's take a look at what classroom leadership here. All right. Because Because of the present status and role requirements of the classroom, the teacher automatically holds the leadership position. Okay? He or she is not the only leader, however, for student leaders inevitably arise and can influence the behaviors of both the teacher and other students and other students. All right, so not just teachers or student leaders, okay, may as well be the leader. Okay. However, it is the teacher who, to a large extent, determines which students attain leadership position. Is that right? The teacher may encourage and reinforce leadership behavior from one child and withhold reinforcement when the same behavior is exhibited in by another child. So on the other hand, students can exert considerable pressure on the teacher by giving or withholding their esteem, and that they can, by this means, shape the teacher's behaviors. All right, all right. So social psychologists, social psychologists social psychologists assume that leadership ability is a set of behavioral skills that most people can learn. Okay, so effective leadership seems to depend on the following: flexible behavior, not rigid, you're flexible. The ability to know what behaviors are needed at a particular time in order for the group to function most efficiently. And lastly, the ability to behave as required, or to get other members of the group to do so. So an effective leader must learn to spot what the group needs in a given situation, and then be flexible enough to provide diverse types of behaviors that are required under different conditions. The effective leader must also get the cooperation of various members of the group so that they will help perform the necessary group function. Let's take a look at styles of leadership. We have authoritarian leaders versus democratic leaders. So look at here. Authoritarian leadership, the characteristics: domineering, never ask for suggestion, always controlling every aspect of the group situation, and requires from group members unquestioned obedience. Right? Unquestioned obedience. But then on the other hand, look at democratic leaders. Okay, constantly asking for suggestion. Democratic, and then allowing what the group to make decisions instead of what deciding everything by themselves, right? So that's what styles of leadership, right? So take a look at what us study here, okay? In terms of the study is on using what building model planes, okay? It's a very, very early study, but classic, okay? So in terms of atmospheres, okay, so that's a dependent variable. A group with democratic leader, they are what? They are more satisfied, okay, with the group. With the leader more cooperative, less hostile, better able to carry on group activities when the leader was not present. And the product was of higher quality. Group with authoritarian leader, just higher rate of production because of authoritarian. Okay, work, okay. They don't feel more satisfied, that they are not more cooperative. Okay, sometimes they're hostile to one another, right? That type of thing. All right. Now, take a look at what group dynamics in the classroom. Okay. The group dynamics of the classroom or of any group situations are based on independent status and role relationships. Whenever there is a change in the expected behavior of any group member, the dynamic interrelationship of the entire group must necessarily change. Now, when a group has a certain expectation regarding an individual's behavior, okay, the individual usually responds in a way consistent with the expectation. So that is to say, the group's expectations become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is that right? Group expectations can be so powerful that the minority group members may learn to hold the prejudices and stereotype attitudes toward their own group that the majority group holds. See, we'll talk a little bit more about this later on. This can be very destructive to the minority group members' self-image. Right? So we will also talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, in when we discuss minority group or black versus white, okay, that in those situations. Okay, so here leadership, a teacher automatically holds the leadership position. Right? Okay, good. Thank you.